I knew exactly how the villain Omega was supposed to die, because I'd watched it happen a dozen times in my head long before I ever opened my eyes inside his body. The alpha hero was supposed to drive a silver blade through my heart before the first chapter truly began. Instead, when the blade came down, it struck someone else's weapon and shattered the execution platform beneath my feet. That was the moment I realized the story I remembered had already gone horribly wrong. Nathan Carter had just saved the one person he was born to kill. I hit the stone floor hard enough to lose my breath. Dust exploded around me while terrified voices echoed through the square. Guards scrambled toward the collapsed platform, shouting orders I barely understood. None of that mattered. My eyes stayed locked on the tall alpha standing between me and a ring of drawn swords. In the novel, Nathan never hesitated. He delivered justice with terrifying precision. He never looked back. Yet now he stood there with his sword raised toward everyone except me. "Stay behind me," he said without turning around. My heartbeat stopped for a second. Those words did not exist in the original story. Someone screamed that the villain Omega was escaping. Another guard rushed forward. Nathan knocked the man's weapon aside before it reached me, moving with frightening speed, as though protecting me had always been instinct instead of betrayal. I didn't wait to question it. I ran. My legs nearly gave out after only a few steps. They weren't my legs. They belonged to Elias Ashford, the infamous villain Omega whose name readers loved to curse before celebrating his inevitable death. I remembered every hateful comment, every chapter where his mistakes piled higher until even he believed dying was the only ending he deserved. Somehow, I had become him. The memory wasn't mine, yet it settled inside my chest like an old scar. Everyone eventually leaves. Everyone eventually decides you're beyond saving. Maybe that's why Elias had stopped fighting long before his execution. Maybe that's why a part of me already believed I deserved the ending waiting for him. A bell rang somewhere above the city walls. The sound wasn't in the novel either. Nathan caught up beside me instead of chasing me. "This way," he ordered. "You're injured." I stared at him like he had lost his mind. "You're supposed to arrest me." His expression tightened for the briefest moment. "Not today." Before I could ask what that meant, the ground trembled beneath us. A crack raced across the cobblestones with a sharp sound like paper tearing. People froze. Windows shattered. The banners hanging from nearby towers twisted, although there was no wind. Then I saw it. A single page drifted through the air as if invisible hands had ripped it from an unseen book. Black ink crawled across the page by itself. The words rearranged until one sentence remained. "The villain Omega must die today." My blood turned cold. The page burst into ash before anyone else seemed to notice it. Nathan looked directly at the empty space where it had vanished. That impossible reaction scared me more than the page itself. He had seen it too. We slipped into a narrow alley while soldiers searched the streets behind us. My mind raced through every chapter one could remember. There had never been floating pages. There had never been earthquakes. There had never been an alpha hero escorting the villain to safety. Why? I finally asked. "Why are you doing this?" Nathan didn't answer immediately. He watched the entrance to the alley, listening to distant footsteps. "Because if you die now," he said quietly, "everything gets worse." That made no sense. Elias's death was supposed to save everyone. It was the turning point that transformed Nathan into the kingdom's greatest hero. Every sacrifice afterward depended on this execution. If Elias survived, the entire plot should collapse. "You have the wrong person," I whispered. "No." Nathan finally looked at me, and for the first time I noticed the exhaustion hidden behind his calm eyes. It wasn't the fatigue of one difficult day. It looked older, heavier, like someone who had been losing the same battle for years. "I have exactly the right person." Another tremor shook the city. This time the walls themselves groaned. Somewhere nearby, a frightened child cried out before the sound was swallowed by chaos. Nathan's grip tightened around his sword. "It's already correcting itself faster than before." Before. The single word echoed through my head louder than the collapsing stone around us. Before what? Before this morning? Before this execution? Or before another life entirely? Nathan stepped toward the street as more guards flooded the intersection, their captain shouting that the villain Omega could not be allowed to escape because the kingdom's future depended on his death. Nathan drew a slow breath, then raised his blade toward the soldiers instead of toward me. I suddenly realized surviving the execution had never been the real miracle. The impossible part was that the greatest hero in the story looked ready to fight the entire kingdom just to keep the villain alive. And somehow, judging by the unbearable sadness in his eyes, this wasn't the first time he had made that choice. Nathan lowered his sword only after the last soldier disappeared around the corner, but the silence that followed felt even more dangerous than the fight itself. The streets weren't calming down. They were changing. Another sheet of paper drifted from the empty sky, fluttering between us before slamming itself against a stone wall. Black ink spread across its surface like fresh blood. One sentence appeared. Execution delayed. Correction required. Before I could touch it, the page folded itself into a burning black feather and dissolved into smoke. You saw that too, I said. Nathan didn't deny it this time. Run. We barely reached the next street before the city exploded into chaos. A merchant's cart overturned without anyone touching it. Horses bolted through the market. A bell tower cracked down the middle, showering broken stone across the square. None of those disasters had happened in the novel. None of them made sense, until I noticed something horrifying. Every accident forced people toward us. Panicked crowds flooded into the streets we had chosen, trapping us exactly where the royal guards were searching. It wasn't random. Something was rearranging the city itself. It's hurting us, I whispered. Nathan's jaw tightened. I was hoping you'd notice before it got worse. We slipped through an abandoned bookstore just as another squad rushed past outside. Dust coated forgotten shelves, and ripped pages littered the floor. My eyes immediately found an old copy of the same novel I thought I had left behind in another world. I yanked it free with trembling hands. The title was identical. The cover was identical. But when I opened the first chapter, every page after my execution was completely blank. I flipped faster. Blank, blank, blank. As if the story itself refused to exist without my death. That's impossible, I breathed. Nathan didn't even look surprised. The ending hasn't been decided yet. My pulse spiked. You knew this would happen? I knew it could. Before I could demand an explanation, a child's frightened cry echoed from outside. We rushed to the broken window overlooking the market. A massive stone statue, cracked by the earlier tremors, leaned toward a family trapped beneath it. In the original story, nothing like this ever happened. The father shoved his daughter away just before the statue collapsed. He wasn't fast enough to escape himself. The impact shook the entire square. People screamed. Blood stained the shattered pavement. My stomach twisted. That man hadn't died because of war. He hadn't died because of some villain's scheme. He had died because Nathan had saved me. Because I was still alive. I stumbled backward. This is my fault. Nathan grabbed my shoulder before I could walk away. No. Someone is dead because of me. Someone is dead because something wants to force the story back into place. What's the difference? For a moment, he had no answer. That silence hurt more than any lie could have. More tremors rolled beneath the city. The bookstore shelves groaned. Hundreds of books crashed onto the floor together. Every single one landed open to blank pages. Then, one by one, words began writing themselves across the paper. Villain survives. Merchant dies. Villain survives. Tower falls. Villain survives. Correction incomplete. I stared in horror as more sentences appeared faster and faster. Different names. Different tragedies. Different sacrifices. Every outcome ended with the same conclusion. Correction incomplete. Nathan ripped one page free before the ink finished forming. The words immediately crawled onto another page instead. Destroying the evidence doesn't stop it, I realized. No. His voice sounded tired. It never does. Never. Again that word. Again the feeling that he'd lived through this conversation before. The walls shook violently. This time the bookstore itself began collapsing. We sprinted through the back entrance, just as the ceiling crashed behind us. Outside, smoke curled into the evening sky from buildings that had caught fire without any visible cause. Soldiers abandoned their search for me to rescue civilians. Others pointed toward the spreading destruction with terrified expressions. They thought this was an attack. They had no idea the city was tearing itself apart simply because one execution had failed. Nathan led me across a narrow bridge toward the quieter district beyond the river. But halfway across, he suddenly stopped. His eyes fixed on the water below. I followed his gaze. Reflected in the river wasn't the bridge behind us. It was the execution platform. Perfectly intact. I watched my reflection kneel at the center of it while Nathan raised his sword over my head exactly as he should have done. The blade fell. Blood splashed across the wooden floor. Then the image vanished beneath rippling water. I staggered backward, unable to breathe. What was that? Nathan looked away before answering. A correction that succeeded. But it didn't happen. Not here. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. How many times has this happened? He remained silent long enough for me to realize he wasn't avoiding the question because he didn't know the answer. He was avoiding it because he did. A cold wind swept across the river. More black feathers drifted from the darkening sky, far more than before, circling above the city like scavengers waiting for something to die. Nathan drew his sword again, but this time it wasn't aimed at soldiers. He was staring at the feathers. "We have to leave the capital tonight," he said, "because once they finish counting." His voice stopped. One feather landed softly on the back of my hand. Ink spread across my skin, forming a single number. 2. Nathan's face lost every trace of color. "No," he whispered. "It found this timeline already." Nathan grabbed my wrist, so hard the black feather almost slipped from my skin. "Don't wipe it off," he said. "Whatever you do, don't erase that number." I stared at the ink burned into the back of my hand. 2. It looked less like writing and more like something alive beneath my skin. Before I could ask another question, the feather dissolved into black dust. Every grain floated toward the city behind us instead of falling into the river. Hundreds of them drifted in the same direction, converging over the royal square where my execution had failed. Then, one after another, church bells across the capital rang at exactly the same moment. Not in celebration. In warning. Nathan pulled me off the bridge. "Move." We abandoned the main road and disappeared into the dense forest surrounding the capital. The farther we ran, the quieter everything became. No birds. No insects. Even the wind seemed unwilling to cross the tree line. That silence frightened me more than the chaos inside the city. Nature itself felt paused, waiting for permission to continue. We reached an abandoned watchtower hidden beneath climbing vines just before dawn. Nathan barred the wooden door and immediately began searching the room. He ignored the dusty furniture and broken windows, heading straight toward the fireplace. Kneeling, he slid aside a loose stone hidden beneath years of ash. My breathing caught. A leather journal rested inside the compartment. It wasn't covered in dust. Someone had opened it recently. Nathan hesitated before handing it to me. "Read the last page." The handwriting looked rushed, almost desperate. I expected strategy notes or maps. Instead, every page described someone named Elias Ashford dying in different ways. Executed, poisoned, burned alive, lost beneath collapsing ruins. Dozens of endings. Every entry ended with the exact same sentence. Nathan failed again. My fingers froze. The final page wasn't finished. The ink trailed off halfway through a sentence. Cycle 21. The execution was interrupted before scheduled. Completion. Subject marked with number 2. Probability of correction. The rest had been violently scratched away. "You wrote this," I whispered. Nathan nodded once. "Most of it." I looked up sharply. "Most?" He walked toward the narrow window overlooking the forest. "Some pages weren't written by me." That answer sent a chill through my spine. Before I could press him, footsteps echoed outside the tower. Both of us reached for weapons at the same instant. Nathan extinguished the lantern while I held my breath. The footsteps stopped directly outside the door. 3 slow knocks echoed through the room. Nobody spoke. Another 3 knocks followed. Then silence. Nathan waited nearly a minute before opening the door. No one stood outside. Only a small wooden box rested on the floorboards. Fresh mud clung to its base as though someone had carried it through the forest moments earlier. There were no footprints leading away. Nathan opened the lid cautiously. Inside lay a silver pocket watch. The cracked glass covered a frozen clock face, stopped at exactly the minute my execution should have happened. Beneath it rested a folded note written in handwriting identical to Nathan's journal. "Don't trust your own memories." Elias unfolded the note twice before realizing that last line wasn't part of the message. It had been added later by someone else using darker ink. He already doesn't. I stared at those words until they blurred. Who wrote that? Nathan looked genuinely unsettled for the first time since we'd met. "Not me." A loud crack interrupted us. The pocket watch began ticking again. Tick, tick, tick. Every swing of its second hand made the tower shudder. Hairline fractures spread across the wooden walls. I snapped the watch shut. The shaking stopped instantly. Nathan took a slow breath. Now you understand. Understand what? It's learning. Before I could respond, I noticed something inside the watch's lid. Tiny engraved initials. Yea, Elias Ashford. This belonged to me. Nathan shook his head. It belonged to another Elias. My thoughts stumbled over the impossible sentence. Another Elias. Another cycle. Another version of me. Suddenly the strange memories eyed. Dismissed since waking in this world no longer felt random. Faces I had never met seemed vaguely familiar. Streets I had never walked felt recognizable before I turned the corner. Even Nathan's voice had carried an odd sense of déjà vu from the beginning. Those feelings hadn't come from reading a novel. They had come from someone else's life. The memories. I whispered. They're mixing. Nathan finally faced me. I was hoping they wouldn't. Outside, the first birds finally began singing. Relief washed through me for half a second before I realized every bird was repeating the exact same three-note pattern with perfect precision. Again, 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 like a recording caught in an endless loop. Nathan slowly unsheathed his sword. It's found us. The birds fell silent all at once. A shadow moved between the trees. Then another. Then dozens more. They stepped into the clearing together, wearing the silver armor of the royal guard. Every face was different. Every pair of eyes was completely black. None of them carried weapons. They didn't need to. As one, they spoke with the same calm voice. Cycle 22 requests the return of subject Elias Ashford. My blood turned cold. Cycle 22. But the feather on my hand still said 2. I looked down again, and the ink had changed. The number was no longer 2. It was 22. Nathan shoved me backward just as the first black-eyed soldier stepped into the clearing. The figure didn't charge. It didn't draw a weapon. It simply raised one empty hand, and every tree surrounding the watchtower groaned at once. Bark split open with sharp cracks, branches twisted toward us like grasping fingers, and the wooden walls behind me shuddered as if the forest itself had decided we no longer belonged there. They're not here to kill us, Nathan said, his voice low but urgent. They're here to reset us. He kicked over the table beside the fireplace, revealing a narrow trapdoor hidden beneath rotten floorboards. Before I could question how he knew it was there, the front wall exploded inward. Splintered timber filled the room as the silent soldiers walked through the dust without flinching. None of them blinked. None of them even looked at Nathan. Every pair of empty black eyes remained fixed on me. We dropped through the trapdoor just as the ceiling collapsed above us. The tunnel beneath the tower was barely tall enough to crawl through, forcing us forward on our hands and knees while dirt rained from the trembling ceiling. Behind us, I expected pursuit. Instead, I heard something worse. Dozens of calm voices speaking in perfect unison. Correction sequence advancing. Subject resisting. Environmental pressure increased. The words echoed through the earth itself. They weren't shouting. They sounded like a verdict already decided. We emerged into a dry riverbed nearly a mile from the tower. I turned just in time to see the entire structure sink silently into the ground. No fire. No explosion. It simply disappeared, leaving nothing but smooth earth behind as though it had never existed. Nathan didn't stop moving. They erased the checkpoint. Checkpoint. He kept scanning the forest instead of answering. That silence told me more than any explanation. He had hidden supplies there before. He had planned to return, which meant he hadn't built that safe house for this escape alone. He had built it across multiple attempts. The journal, the hidden compartment, the tunnel, none of it had been luck. Every step Nathan took carried the weight of preparation repeated over and over again. A sharp whistle cut through the air. An arrow struck the riverbank inches from my foot. Royal scouts emerged from the trees on the opposite ridge, real soldiers this time, not the black-eyed things from the tower. Their captain pointed directly at Nathan instead of me. By order of the crown, Alpha hero Nathan Carter is charged with treason for aiding the villain Omega. My chest tightened. In the novel, Nathan's name was untouchable. People saluted before he even spoke. Now the kingdom itself had turned against him. Nathan slowly lowered his sword instead of raising it. "Stay behind me," he said. "Again?" I asked bitterly. "You keep throwing everything away for someone who's supposed to die." His answer came without hesitation. Everything was already lost if I let you. The scouts released another volley. Nathan deflected 2 arrows, but a third tore through his shoulder. He barely reacted. He grabbed my arm and sprinted downstream while more soldiers poured into the valley. The hunt wasn't just continuing. It had become official. By sunset, every village bell we passed rang the same warning. Harboring the villain Omega or the traitor Alpha would be punished as treason. Posters bearing our faces appeared faster than riders could possibly deliver them. Children whispered our names with fear. Farmers barred their doors before we reached them. The correction wasn't only changing reality anymore. It was rewriting public memory. We found shelter inside an abandoned watermill after dark. Nathan finally pulled the broken arrow from his shoulder. Blood soaked through his shirt, but what froze me wasn't the wound. It was what happened next. The blood flowing across his skin gathered into tiny black letters before fading away. Failure recorded. I stared in disbelief. Your blood. Nathan looked down for only a second before covering the wound. Don't. What is that? A consequence. Of what? He remained silent. I was beginning to hate that silence. Every answer only created 3 more questions. While Nathan bandaged the injury, I searched the mill for anything useful. Inside an old storage chest, I found dozens of official notices. They all carried today's date. Every one described different crimes committed by me. Murder, arson, poisoning, conspiracy against the crown. The details contradicted each other completely, yet each report ended with the same conclusion. Elias Ashford must be executed immediately. It didn't matter what the accusation was. The ending never changed. Reality wasn't searching for evidence anymore. It was manufacturing reasons. My eyes drifted toward the final page buried beneath the others. Unlike the official notices, this one wasn't signed by the crown. It was a hand-drawn map marked with circles stretching across the kingdom. 21 circles had been crossed out in dark ink. Only one remained. Beside it, someone had written, "Last convergence point." Nathan saw the map the moment I unfolded it. His expression changed faster than I'd ever seen before. Fear. Real fear. He snatched the page from my hands. Where did you find this? It was inside the chest. He stared at the final untouched circle for several long seconds. We don't have as much time as I thought. What is it? He hesitated, then finally answered. It's where every failed cycle ends. My pulse quickened. Then, that's where we find the truth. Nathan closed his eyes as though I'd just confirmed his worst fear. No, he whispered. That's where the story remembers everything. Before I could ask what that meant, the map shifted in his hands. Fresh ink spread across the last remaining circle, and beneath it, new words slowly appeared as though written by an invisible pen. Cycle 22 participants confirmed. Hero present. Villain present. Final observer awakened. The words "Final observer awakened" did not stay on the map. They lifted from the paper in thin black threads, crossed the room, and sank into the dark glass of the watermill window. For one impossible second, the reflection staring back at me was not mine. Elias Ashford stood there in execution clothes, blood running from his mouth, one hand pressed against the glass from the other side. Then he mouthed 3 words. Nathan started this. The window shattered inward. Nathan pulled me down before the fragments reached my face, but the accusation had already landed. He had saved me. He had lost his title for me. He had bled words into his own skin. And according to the dead man whose body I wore, he was also the reason the cycles existed. I shoved Nathan away and grabbed the fallen map. What did you do? He looked at the broken window, not at me. Outside, the river had stopped moving. Water hung motionless beneath the wheel, reflecting a sky filled with black pages. We need to reach the convergence point before it fully opens. That isn't an answer. It's the only place that can prove one. The map burned cold in my hand. The final circle pulsed near the northern cliffs, no more than a few hours away. Nathan reached for it. I stepped back. It was the first time since the execution that I refused to stand behind him. Something changed in his face when he noticed. Not anger. Acceptance. You think I'm the enemy now, he said. I think you knew I would. He unbuckled his sword and placed it on the floor between us. Then he removed the silver crest from his coat, the symbol that had once marked him as the kingdom's alpha hero. He set that down too. Take both. Why? Because the closer we get, the less you'll know which memories are yours. If I become a threat, you need a way to stop me. That wasn't reassurance. It was evidence. I took the sword. We left the mill before sunrise, but the road north no longer behaved like a road. Every time we passed a stone marker, the number carved into it changed. 9 miles became 6. 6 became 12. Once, we crossed the same dead oak 3 times without turning back. The story wasn't blocking us. It was measuring us. At midday, we found the first body. It wore Nathan's face. The dead alpha lay beside the road in rusted armor, older by at least 20 years, with a black blade through his chest. His left hand still clutched a folded page. Nathan stopped breathing. I opened it before he could stop me. The message was written in his handwriting. Cycle 7. Elias trusted me too late. I turned the body over. Beneath it lay another corpse, burned almost beyond recognition. The silver ring on its finger bore Elias's crest. Then another body appeared farther down the road. Another Nathan. Another Elias. Different wounds. Different ages. Different endings. They formed a trail leading north. This was not a graveyard created by the story. It was a record. You remember them, I said. Nathan's silence confirmed it. All of them. Not clearly. Enough to build safe houses. Enough to leave journals. Enough to know what the pages do. His gaze stayed on the dead version of himself. Enough to know that every time I failed, the next cycle began with less time. The largest open question since the execution finally had an answer. Nathan had saved me because he had already watched me die. Not once. Not twice. 21 times. But the answer broke something else open. Why did the first cycle begin? I asked. Nathan closed his eyes. Because I refused the original ending. The cliffs rose ahead of us. Before he could say more, at their base stood a door carved directly into the rock. No guards. No lock. Only 2 handprints pressed into the stone. One marked hero, one marked villain. When we placed our hands against them, the door opened onto a circular chamber filled with suspended pages. Thousands of them turned slowly in the air, each showing a different version of our lives. On one page, Nathan killed me at the execution and became the hero the kingdom remembered. On another, he saved me, and the capital burned. On another, I killed him first. Every page ended in blood. At the center of the chamber stood a glass coffin. Inside lay another Elias. He looked exactly like me, except his eyes were open. The final observer. When I approached, the body inside raised one hand and pressed it against the glass. The same motion I had seen in the window. Nathan stepped between us. Don't listen to him. The coffin cracked. The other Elias smiled. He still says that every time. The glass burst outward. I lifted Nathan's sword, but the man who emerged did not attack. He held out a torn page covered in signatures. 21 versions of Nathan Carter. 21 promises written in the same words. I will save Elias, no matter what the world becomes. Beneath them was one final signature. Mine. The story did not create the cycles, the observer said. You did. Memory struck me like a blade. Not the novel. Not Elias's childhood. Something older. I saw Nathan kneeling beside my body after the original execution, begging for one chance to change the ending. Then I saw myself somewhere beyond death, answering him. Again, we had both agreed. We had both chosen the loop. Nathan had not trapped me alone. I had helped him build the prison. The observer placed the torn page in my hand. Fresh words appeared beneath my signature. The cycles will continue until hero willingly kills villain, or villain willingly condemns hero. Nathan had saved me in every timeline, but that was exactly why the story kept resetting. His protection was not breaking fate. It was feeding the mechanism. The chamber doors slammed shut behind us. Every suspended page turned at once, showing the capital collapsing, villages burning, and thousands of strangers dying in our place. The observer looked from Nathan to me. You came here to learn how to escape the ending. His smile disappeared. There is no escape. There is only a choice about which one of you becomes the villain this time. The chamber began collapsing before either of us could answer. Every floating page ignited at once, not with fire, but with blinding white light. The images of ruined cities, dead heroes, and countless versions of myself disintegrated into swirling fragments that circled the observer like a storm. He never moved. He simply watched us as the ceiling cracked overhead. You've learned the truth, he said calmly. Now the story must remove every path except one. The stone beneath our feet split apart. Nathan didn't hesitate. He threw himself toward me instead of the widening chasm. wrapping one arm around my waist as the floor gave way. We crashed onto a narrow ledge below while the observer remained standing above us, untouched by the destruction. He wasn't escaping it. The collapse wasn't meant for him. It was meant for us. We scrambled through a jagged tunnel as massive slabs of stone crashed behind us, sealing the chamber forever. By the time we emerged onto the cliffside, the entrance had vanished completely. The mountain looked untouched, as though the chamber had never existed. Only the torn page remained clenched in my hand. 21 signatures, 21 promises, and mine among them. Nathan leaned against a boulder, breathing heavily. His wounded shoulder had reopened during the escape. Blood soaked through the fresh bandages, but this time the black letters spreading across his skin didn't say failure recorded. They formed a new sentence. Final deviation detected. He stared at the words without surprise. It changed, I said. Because you remember now. Before I could ask what that meant, the letters dissolved, leaving behind a deep black scar that hadn't been there before. It looked less like an injury and more like something carved into him from the inside. We had barely taken another step when the first crack split the sky. Not thunder. The blue itself fractured into long black lines stretching from horizon to horizon. Through those cracks, I caught glimpses of other places flickering in and out of existence. A battlefield, the execution platform, the ruined watermill. 21 different realities bleeding into each other. The story wasn't simply resetting anymore. It was collapsing its own walls. Villages appeared where forests had stood moments earlier. Rivers changed direction in the span of a heartbeat. The world no longer cared about consistency. It only cared about reaching the ending. We reached a small farming settlement by dusk, hoping to find supplies. Instead, we found silence. Every house stood empty. Meals remained on tables. Doors hung open. There were no bodies. No signs of struggle. Only pages scattered across the streets like fallen leaves. I picked one up. It listed every resident by name. Beside each name was a single word. Relocated. Relocated where? I asked. Nathan knelt beside fresh footprints leading toward the northern road. They stopped abruptly after a few yards, as though the people had simply ceased to exist. Not where, he answered quietly. When? My stomach tightened. The story wasn't killing witnesses anymore. It was moving them outside the timeline entirely. It was adapting. We entered the village church just as another tremor rattled the stained glass windows. Unlike every other building we'd seen, this one contained fresh candlelight. Someone had been there recently. On the altar rested a sealed wooden box with my name carved into the lid. Elias Ashford. Nathan froze the instant he saw it. Don't open it. You knew it would be here? I hoped it wouldn't. His answer only strengthened my resolve. I broke the wax seal. Inside lay a simple iron key and another journal. This one wasn't written by Nathan. The handwriting belonged to me. Dear next Elias, if you're reading this, then I finally trusted Nathan. That means we've already failed again. My pulse quickened as I turned the page. The journal didn't describe another escape plan. It described experiments. Different attempts to break the cycle. Running away. Accepting execution. Killing Nathan. Letting Nathan kill me. Destroying the story pages. Burning the capital. Every possibility ended with the same conclusion. The story adapted faster every time. Then, halfway through the journal, I found something none of the previous records had mentioned. Cycle 12. We discovered the story cannot create anything. It only rewrites choices that already exist. I read the sentence twice. Then 3 times. The realization hit me all at once. Every disaster. Every accusation. Every correction. The story had never invented events from nothing. It had twisted real decisions into predetermined outcomes, which meant if no choice existed, it had nothing to rewrite. Nathan, I said slowly, the story doesn't control us. He looked at me carefully. Go on. It waits for us to choose. Then it steals the choice. For the first time since I'd met him, a faint spark of hope crossed his face. That's why I kept trying to save you, he whispered. I thought if I made enough different choices. But every choice still fit the hero. His expression hardened again. We both understood at the same moment. Nathan had never truly escaped his role. Every sacrifice, every rescue, every act of protection still belonged to the hero the story expected him to be. Even rebellion had become predictable. I looked back at the iron key resting inside the box. A small tag hung from it with 3 handwritten words. For the locked ending. Before either of us could touch it, church bells rang across the empty village. The sound didn't come from outside. It came from beneath the floor. The wooden boards split open in a perfect circle, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness that hadn't existed seconds earlier. Cold air poured upward, carrying the smell of old paper and ash. Then a child's voice echoed from below. "You're finally asking the right question." Nathan drew his sword immediately. I picked up the key. Whatever waited beneath the church wasn't another trap designed to force the old ending. It had appeared only after we realized the story could rewrite choices but couldn't create them. We no longer needed to survive until the end. We needed to find the one choice the story had never seen before. And somewhere, beneath the church, someone already knew what that choice was. The moment I slipped the iron key into my pocket, the staircase slammed shut behind us. The floor sealed itself as though it had never opened, trapping Nathan and me inside the abandoned church. Every candle extinguished at once. Only the altar remained illuminated, where the wooden box slowly crumbled into gray dust. Then the bell rang again. This time the sound came from everywhere. Every window shattered outward. The empty pews splintered. The stone walls groaned under invisible pressure. The story had stopped trying to guide us. Now it was trying to erase every path except one. A child's laughter echoed beneath the floorboards. "Too late," the voice whispered. "It knows you've found the key." The church doors burst open before either of us reached them. Black pages flooded inside like a living storm, swirling through the air instead of falling. Wherever they touched wood, the timber aged decades in seconds. Wherever they brushed stone, cracks spread like veins. Nathan shoved me toward a side corridor. "Go." I didn't move. The pages weren't attacking me. Every single one curved around my body before converging on Nathan instead. His sword flashed again and again, cutting through paper that instantly replaced itself. Then one page wrapped around his wounded shoulder. He dropped to one knee. The black scar on his skin flared crimson. New words carved themselves into the wound. "Hero refusing correction. Sentence pending." Before I could reach him, chains erupted from the floor beneath his feet. They weren't made of iron. They were formed from strips of written parchment wrapped together into heavy links. Every chain carried lines from the original story describing the alpha hero's duty to execute the villain Omega. Nathan struggled once. The chains tightened. "Don't waste time," he growled. "Take the key. I'm not leaving you. You already have before." The words hit harder than the chains. He hadn't meant them as an accusation. They sounded like a memory. The laughter beneath the church stopped. Silence settled over the room. Then a little boy stepped through the altar as though the stone wasn't solid. He looked no older than 10, dressed in simple white clothes untouched by dust. His eyes weren't black like the soldiers. They were filled with countless moving words, each sentence flowing across his irises before disappearing. He wasn't human. He wasn't another observer. Somehow, he felt older than either. "You've always failed here," the boy said, studying Nathan with genuine curiosity. 21 times he chose you. 21 times you accepted." Nathan pulled against the parchment chains. "Don't listen to him." "Why not?" the boy asked. "You've spent every cycle proving I'm right." He turned toward me and extended one small hand. "Give me the key." I tightened my grip instead. "Who are you?" "I'm the ending." He smiled sadly. "Not the author. Not the story. Just the place where every choice eventually arrives." That answer only deepened the mystery. Before I could ask another question, the church walls dissolved completely. We were no longer inside a building. We stood in the center of the capital's execution square. Crowds surrounded the platform exactly as they had on the day I awakened in Elias's body. Except this time, every face stared only at Nathan. The execution block was empty. My chains were gone. Instead, Nathan now knelt where I once had. The royal decree echoed through the square. Alpha hero Nathan Carter, guilty of corrupting destiny. The crowd cheered. My breath caught. This wasn't an illusion. The people looked real. The heat of the afternoon sun felt real. The smell of dust and sweat was real. The story had rewritten the roles completely. Guards marched toward Nathan carrying the same silver blade that should have ended my life. "This is your final correction," the boy said quietly beside me. "Not his." The captain held out the execution sword. "To me. Carry out your duty." My fingers refused to move. Around us, the city began changing faster than ever before. Buildings flickered between different versions of themselves. Citizens vanished, then reappeared wearing different clothes, speaking different names, living different histories. The story wasn't rewriting one execution anymore. It was rewriting the entire world around one. Decision. Nathan met my eyes across the platform. He didn't struggle. He didn't beg. Listen carefully, he said. The story cannot invent a choice. I remembered my own journal. Cycle 12. It only rewrites choices that already exist. He nodded almost imperceptibly. So don't give it one. The boy sighed. He's still trying to outthink the inevitable. He raised one finger. Every version of the city froze in place. Then another execution platform appeared beside the first. Another Nathan knelt there. Then another. Then another. 21 platforms stretched across the square, each holding a different version of him from every failed cycle. Some were young. Some were scarred. One had gray hair. One was missing an arm. Every one of them looked at me with the same quiet expression. None blamed me. Everyone waited. The weight of 21 promises settled onto my shoulders all at once. I understood then why Nathan looked so tired the first day we met. He hadn't simply remembered failure. He had carried every version of himself that had failed before. The boy spoke again. You believe the story trapped you inside repeated endings. He shook his head. No. Nathan did. The 21 versions of Nathan all answered together. And we'd do it again. Their voices overlapped into one impossible sentence that shook the entire square. The story reacted instantly. The sky split completely open. Massive pages descended from the fractures, each larger than a castle tower, blotting out the sun. Entire districts of the capital folded into blank paper before my eyes. Streets disappeared. People vanished without screaming. Reality itself was being erased because Nathan refused to stop choosing me. The boy looked almost disappointed. One more cycle, and there will be no world left to save. He pointed toward the execution, sword resting in my hands. Either kill the hero. His finger shifted toward my own chest. Or choose to become the villain exactly as the story remembers. The 21 execution platforms collapsed into one. Every other Nathan disappeared, leaving only the man standing before me now, still bound by parchment chains. He smiled for the first time. Since the execution had failed, it wasn't hopeful. It was peaceful. Whatever you choose, he said softly, don't save me this time. I dropped the execution sword. The blade struck the wooden platform with a sharp crack that echoed across the frozen square. Every eye turned toward it. Every page hanging in the fractured sky stopped moving. Then I stepped past the sword and stood directly between Nathan and the executioner. No, I said. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply the first choice I'd ever made that belonged to neither the hero nor the villain. The story reacted instantly. The parchment chains around Nathan exploded upward and wrapped themselves around me instead. Hundreds of lines from the original novel crawled across my arms, my chest, my throat. Villain refuses justice. Villain corrupts hero. Villain destroys the ending. The words burned into my skin like molten iron, trying to force me back into the role I had spent this entire journey escaping. I didn't fight them. I looked straight at the child who called himself the ending. You said the story can't create choices. His expression remained calm. It can't. Then these words aren't truth. I grabbed one of the living strips of parchment and tore it away from my arm. Blood followed the paper, but underneath the wound there were no new words. Only skin. They're only predictions. The first page in the sky caught fire. Nathan stared at me in stunned silence before the execution platform lurched violently beneath our feet. Across the capital, towers folded into blank sheets while entire streets vanished. The story wasn't correcting anymore. It was unraveling. The ending lifted one hand, and every surviving page rushed toward me instead of Nathan. Thousands of endings crashed together around my body. I saw myself dying under the hero's blade. I saw myself becoming the monster history remembered. I saw Nathan walking away alone after finally killing me. Every possibility demanded the same sacrifice. Every possibility insisted someone had to become the villain so the world could survive. Then another memory broke through them all. Not from the novel. Not from Elias. From before the first cycle. Nathan kneeling beside my body after the original execution, begging a silent universe for one impossible chance. I remembered my own answer now. I hadn't asked him to save me forever. I had asked him to stop letting stories decide who deserved to live. Somewhere along the way, we had both forgotten that promise. "Nathan," I shouted. "What was the first thing I told you?" His eyes widened. For a heartbeat, he looked exactly like the man from that forgotten memory instead of the exhausted hero standing before me. Then he whispered, "Don't save me. Save the choice." The words hit the world harder than any sword. Every page surrounding us froze in midair. The child took one step backward for the first time. "No," he said quietly. "You weren't supposed to remember that." I smiled despite the pain ripping through my body. "Neither were you." I lunged forward, not toward the ending, but toward the giant page hanging directly above the execution square. It was the first page, the original ending, the one sentence every cycle had protected. Villain Omega dies. Hero saves the kingdom. Instead of cutting it with Nathan's sword, I pressed my bleeding hand against the words. Blood spread across the ink. The sentence didn't disappear. It changed. Villain Omega chooses. The page split from top to bottom with a sound like thunder. Every other page in the sky shattered with it. The black-eyed soldiers dissolved into drifting ash. The execution platforms vanished. The parchment chains around Nathan crumbled into blank scraps. For the first time since I had awakened inside Elias Ashford, the world stopped trying to force us somewhere. The ending cried out, not in anger, but in fear. His body fractured into countless written sentences peeling away one after another. "You don't understand," he shouted. "Without an ending, the story dies." Nathan finally reached my side. He didn't pull me behind him. He stood beside me. Equal. Neither protector nor prisoner. "Then let it end," he answered. The child looked between us, searching desperately for hesitation, guilt, regret, anything the story could rewrite into another cycle. He found none. Instead, he watched Nathan lower his sword completely. I let the broken execution blade fall from my hand. Neither of us chose violence. Neither of us accepted the roles waiting for us. We simply refused to keep performing them. The ending's body unraveled into millions of loose words. They scattered across the sky like snow before fading into empty light. One by one, the enormous cracks overhead sealed themselves. Buildings returned, not exactly as they had been, but as places no longer trapped between conflicting histories. People reappeared in the streets, blinking in confusion, unaware that entire lifetimes had nearly been rewritten around them. The crushing pressure that had followed us since the failed execution finally disappeared. The silence that replaced it felt almost unreal. Nathan looked at the scar on his shoulder. The black letters were gone. The wound remained. My own arms still carried blood where the story had branded me, but the words had vanished there too. The torn page with 21 signatures drifted down between us. Every signature faded except two. Mine. His. Beneath them appeared a final line written in fresh ink. "The choice belongs to you now." Nathan picked up the page without speaking. I looked toward the execution square where my death should have happened. The platform was gone. In its place stood nothing except weathered stone and open sky. We had finally ended the battle that had consumed 22 cycles. But as the wind carried the last blank page beyond the rooftops, I realized something neither of us had expected. The story was gone. Now we had to discover who Elias Ashford and Nathan Carter were without it. Morning arrived without bells, without trembling streets, and without pages falling from the sky. For the first time since I had awakened inside Elias Ashford's body, the world greeted the sunrise as though it belonged to itself instead of to a story. People wandered back into the capital in quiet confusion, carrying memories that no longer matched perfectly, but no longer fought each other either. Broken buildings remained broken. Burned homes remained burned. The wounds left by 22 forgotten cycles had not vanished simply because we had escaped them. They had become real history instead of endless corrections. Nathan stood beside me, overlooking the square where I should have died. His shoulders still bore the scar the story had carved into him. But when he touched it, no words appeared. No invisible force judged him. No unseen author waited for another mistake. He looked strangely uncertain, without someone else's destiny to carry. I realized I felt exactly the same. We had spent so long surviving the next correction that neither of us knew what ordinary tomorrow looked like. Workers began dismantling the remains of the execution platform before noon. They didn't argue about whose orders they were following. They simply agreed no one wanted another scaffold standing in the center of the city. I watched each wooden beam lowered to the ground until only bare stone remained. That place no longer belonged to the villain who was meant to die or the hero who was meant to kill him. It belonged to people who wanted to build something else. Nathan quietly handed me the torn page carrying our 2 remaining signatures. The ink had faded overnight until only one sentence remained visible. "The choice belongs to you now." He smiled faintly. "I think it's finally telling the truth." I folded the page and slipped it into my pocket instead of preserving it like a sacred relic. It wasn't a prophecy anymore. It was simply a reminder. We spent the next several days helping rebuild instead of hiding. At first, people recognized Nathan with fear, whispering that the legendary alpha hero had betrayed the kingdom. Others looked at me and instinctively stepped back, unable to explain why my face made them uneasy. Then something unexpected happened. An elderly mason asked us to help lift a collapsed wall. A child handed Nathan a bucket of water without hesitation. A woman whose shop had burned thanked me for rescuing her husband, even though neither of us remembered that moment the same way. Piece by piece, strangers chose what mattered more than the stories they had once believed. They judged us by what we did in front of them, not by roles written for us before we were born. One afternoon, we returned to the abandoned bookstore, where I had first found the blank novel. The shelves had been repaired, and someone had gathered the scattered books into careful stacks. I found the same worn volume waiting where I remembered it. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the cover. This time the pages were not blank. They were empty, clean, waiting. There was no execution scene, no villain Omega, no alpha hero, no ending waiting to trap us. Nathan looked over my shoulder. "Does it scare you?" he asked. I thought about the answer longer than I expected. The old fear whispered that without a story, I would become worthless, that sooner or later everyone would decide I deserved the ending they had once expected. That fear had lived inside Elias long before I arrived. Somewhere along the way, it had become mine too. Then I remembered the first thing Nathan had ever said after saving me. "Stay behind me." He no longer stood in front of me now. He stood beside me, equal. Not because he had stopped protecting me, but because he finally trusted me to walk forward on my own. "No," I answered honestly. "It doesn't scare me anymore." He nodded once, as though that single sentence had made every lost cycle worth enduring. We left the bookstore together and crossed the city without anyone telling us where heroes or villains were supposed to stand. Near the northern gate, children were planting young trees where the road had once cracked apart during the corrections. One little girl struggled to straighten a bent sapling against the wind. Before either of us could step forward, another child quietly moved beside her. One held the tree. The other packed fresh soil around its roots. Neither tried to do the work alone. Nathan laughed softly under his breath. It was the first carefree sound I had ever heard from him. Weeks later, we climbed the cliffs where the hidden chamber had once existed. There was no stone door anymore. No floating pages. No glass coffin. Only open sky stretching farther than either of us could see. I reached into my pocket and unfolded the last surviving page one final time. The paper had become completely blank. Slowly, carefully, I placed it beneath a flat stone overlooking the valley. We didn't need to destroy it. We didn't need to worship it. We simply left it behind. As we turned to go, the wind caught the corner of the page, but instead of filling it with new words, it lifted it into the sunlight until the paper disappeared against the bright sky itself. Nathan glanced at me. "Where to now?" I smiled because, for the first time, neither of us already knew the answer. We walked away from the cliff without looking back, side by side, leaving behind the ending that had tried to define us. And when the path finally disappeared beyond the horizon, no one told us to stay behind anyone ever again.